Everyone knows the ancient Chinese invented gunpowder, which we often see in the form of firecrackers and fireworks. Boring, you already knew that. But they also invented the compass. Yep, you knew that one too. What about paper? And even toilet paper and printing. So most people know the 4 great inventions of Chinese history, or 四大发明, but there are a load of other things that Chinese people invented that are really interesting and often predate similar things in the West by 1,000 years or more. A while back, I bought the book The Genius of China, written by Robert Temple based on the research of Dr. Joseph Needham, who looked into all sorts of inventions in ancient China that will really surprise you. Did you know they had land-based sailing carriages with wheels? They also had landmines and cigarette lighters. And in this video, we are going to go through a load of this cool stuff. This is 5 ancient Chinese inventions that will blow your mind. Number 1. Land sailing. So around the year 550 AD, China was in the middle of the Liang dynasty, and a man named Xiao Yi, who would later become the emperor of the dynasty, wrote a book called The Golden Hall Master, or Jin Lou Zi. In it, there is a very interesting passage. Gao Tang Wu Shu was able to make a wind carriage. It would carry 30 men and travel several hundred li in one day. 1 li is about 1/3 of a mile or half a kilometer, so you're still talking about maybe 100 miles or more in a day. And these things were big, carrying 30 men. It sounds like it could have been a really useful way for moving troops to the front lines quickly. It was kind of like a land version of a Chinese junk. This is the first mention of such a vehicle in history. But there is more. There is a later description of a mobile wind-powered palace belonging to Emperor Yang of the Sui dynasty, who reigned from 604 to 618 AD. It is described as a mobile wind-facing palace. It carried guards on its upper deck, and there was room for several hundred persons to circulate in it. Below there were wheels and axles, and when pushed along, it moved quite easily as if by the help of spirits. Among those who saw it, there was no one who was not amazed. Based on that description, I'm thinking it would have looked something like this. This was kind of like the ancient Chinese version of Jabba's sail barge, where you would have hundreds of people inside having a party, and the emperor could take his prisoners out to the Gobi Desert to be fed to ancient Chinese sand dragons.
Victims of the Almighty Sarlacc, His Excellency hopes that you will die honorably.
Now, those previous examples I obviously made with AI, but here is an actual historical drawing of a small land sail craft from China in the year 1599. And later land yachts were invented in the West too, but we're talking about the year 1600, over 1,000 years after the first ones came on the scene in China. Today, land sailing exists as a beach sport rather than a mode of transportation. Alright, let's move on to our next invention. Number 2, Chinese matchsticks. Did you know the Chinese also seem to have invented matchsticks about 1,000 years before they became common in Europe? Check out this passage from a classical text called Records of the Unworldly and the Strange, Qing Yi Lu. At nighttime, if there is an emergency, it may take time and effort to light a lamp, but a knowledgeable man would make batches of pine wood strips infused with sulfur, stored ready for use. As soon as these sticks touched a flame, they would ignite, creating a little flame like an ear of corn. These supernatural-like things were called bringing light slaves, yin guang nu, but now people who trade these as goods for convenience use the name fire inches, huo cun. So it looks like the Chinese invented a matchstick that could easily be ignited by any lantern or flame that was already burning, and you could use that to carry a flame elsewhere and light other lanterns that you wanted to light. Although it doesn't seem like they invented a way of striking the match to light it, at least not at first. But if you think about it, fire was the only light and heat source they had, so it would probably be easy to find a flame already burning on a lantern or a stove to light the matchstick off of. Although the text we just read was from 590 AD, it seems Chinese matchsticks were invented as early as 577 AD by palace ladies, and they later became a commodity that was sold throughout China. But there is another type of fire-making device that seems to have been developed at the same time as the Chinese matchstick. Number 3, the Chinese cigarette lighter. So this one is really cool, and this one was supposedly invented by palace ladies during the Northern and Southern dynasties period. when the northern Qi kingdom was under siege, in order to preserve a flame in the palace so lanterns and stoves could be lit. It was a bamboo tube holding a smoldering ember that could be ignited into a flame with one blow. This is called 火折子, and you often see it in Chinese period dramas, like this guy here who's holding one in his hand and ultimately uses it to burn his enemy's house down. It seems when filming these dramas, some of the actors have a harder time getting the thing to ignite than others. But anyway, the idea of this is that you keep in your pocket a little smoldering ember that is inside a bamboo tube that had a lid with a small hole for airflow. And these embers could burn for 1 to 2 days and ignite into a flame every time you remove the lid and blew. There are videos online of people making the 火折子 using the traditional ingredients that include pine resin, sulfur, and incense mixed with dried plant stems and a few other things. And these would then be rolled into a tube shape that was inserted into a hollowed out bamboo case to keep in your pocket. So whenever it was time for an emotional scene, you could whip it out and stare into each other's eyes to the gentle flickering of a flame. Oh, I think I'm gonna throw up. Let's move on to something more practical. Number 4, the rudder. So it seems the Chinese were the first to invent the stern post mounted rudder. Many types of European ships use oars and even special steering oars to steer the ship, like this Viking longboat you see here. But this was still an oar mounted on the side of the ship for steering. It was not an actual rudder and didn't offer as efficient steering as a rudder mounted directly at the back of the boat would. But it seems that while the Vikings and Romans were still using steering oars, the Chinese actually invented a stern-mounted rudder that was on the rear of the ship in the middle. It can clearly be seen in this clay model of a ship that dates back to the Han Dynasty 2,000 years ago. We then have more pictures of such rudders in use in later dynasties, like this one from the Song Dynasty. The Chinese also invented the fenestrated rudder, which is a rudder with holes in it, which makes it easier to turn, especially at speed, but it didn't significantly hurt the rudder's effectiveness. These fenestrated rudders didn't become common in Europe until 1901, but many Chinese junks throughout history had them. Alright, let's now move on to our final Chinese invention. Number 5. Chinese landmines. Now, if you have watched our videos, you may know that although the Chinese didn't invent guns, they did invent gunpowder, or 火药, literally fire medicine. And they had lots of different fire weapons, like ships that rammed you with fire. Fire catapults. Fire! Okay, that clip was actually the Mongols attacking the Chinese, but the Chinese had them too. And they even had hand-thrown grenades, which you can see being used in a war with Japan in this classical Japanese painting. Now, many of these fire weapons are outlined in the book 火龙经, or the Fire Dragon Classic, which is a manual of multiple types of fire weapons. Things like the 飞云霹雳炮, or the Flying Cloud Thunderbolt Cannon. Sounds like a name from an anime or something. And this thing would fire multiple projectiles. And hidden amongst all of these interesting weapons is this one, the 自贩炮, or self-tripped landmine. The mine's fuse was ignited by enemy movement, but it was actually a series of mines connected together, so when the first one went off, the fire would spread along the fuses that connected them and multiple mines would detonate, like you can see in this picture. The earliest use of these mines was supposedly in 1277 AD, when the Song Dynasty used them to fight off Mongol soldiers. Alright guys, that is the video for today. If you're interested in myths and legends from Chinese history, do check out Shenyun Performing Arts, the sponsor of today's show. They portray Chinese historical stories on stage using classical Chinese dance. They're currently in the middle of their 2026 world tour. Click the link below to watch the trailer, and if you do go on to buy a ticket, use code LCN2026 for a waived booking fee on all US and Canada show dates. Please subscribe to our channel if you're new, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.